Hello and welcome to my series on famous Indian military commanders after independence to mark our Independence Day, and it is also a series on which many gallant men and their deeds are going to be recalled. I'd like to start with who I regard as amongst the best military commanders that India has produced after independence, and that was General Thimayya, a Kurgi and from the Madikeri area of Kurg, who had a giant personality both physically and quite literally. And among the greats that the Indian Army looks up to, we have General Cariappa, also a Kurgi, and we have Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, also a Parsi and a minority community, but with exceptional leadership traits. But let's go to General Thimayya. General Thimayya was a man of great stature and standing and character. He made his mark initially by being the first 6 Indians to be selected to go to Sandhurst for training, to get commissioned as officers. And while being commissioned from Sandhurst, the adjutant of his passing out parade was none other than Major Boyd Browning, who later became famous as General Sir Boyd Browning, and who said to Montgomery in World War II, "Field Marshal, I think you're going a bridge too far," cautioning the Field Marshal for not being too ambitious. Montgomery's operation was a half success, if you can call it that. But Thimayya learned a few leadership traits from Boyd Browning, who had quite a few interesting stories that made up his life and his career. Among others was when he was on the parade ground and Thimayya was passing out, Sandhurst witnessed, quite surprisingly, in those summer months, a very huge downpour of rain. Boyd Browning decided to throw protocol aside and on his horse turned it around and marched it into the main building of Sandhurst, which is the background of the parade at Sandhurst. This tradition was implemented by the Indian Army, and since the 1920s till date, the adjutant of the Indian Military Academy marches his horse into the Chetwood building at the end of the parade to the tunes of Odd Lang Syne. But more specifically, Thimayya and his career. General Thimayya initially became famous for commanding the 1st Indian Brigade, which had 3 Indian battalion commanders in the Burma Front. It was recognized by Mountbatten and even Churchill as perhaps the most exceptional brigade with a battlefield record on the Burma Front. Thimayya after that came to Kashmir and was made in charge of the 2 regions of Jammu and Kashmir, where he took up some initiatives which left a huge mark on the history of Kashmir as we know it today. The Pakistani invaders were attacking Kashmir from all along in the area we now know as the Line of Control. Thimayya took the initiative in his own hand and decided to implement a military operation which took Pakistanis by surprise. The operation was initially to go in on 30th October 1947, but on 1st November 1947, the operation was implemented because of bad weather. The second thing which is very important to understand is Thimayya got hold of Stuart tanks to shock the Pakistani invaders and moved them up into the mountainside towards Zojila, which has become known historically as the highest battlefield where tanks were ever used. The Stuart tanks were sometimes too unwieldy and too heavy, so Thimayya had the tank tops removed, that was the turret, and had them travel separately on trucks while the tank body moved towards the battlefield. This shocked the Pakistani raiders, who left the battlefield and ran away. After that, Thimayya, and he was in the leading tank, after that General Thimayya chose to go with Air Commodore Mehar Singh for the first aircraft landing in Leh. Leh didn't have a proper airfield, so on a Kacha airfield, they both landed. The local residents of Leh Ladakh were shocked. They thought some birds from heavens had landed. But Indian commanders and troops landing in Leh changed the situation and put a stop to Pakistan's plans to capture Leh Ladakh, which even till now Pakistan aspires for as a lackey of the Chinese. At that time, it was a Pakistani plan. But after the 1962 conflict, where General Thimayya ran into trouble with Pandit Nehru, the area north of Ladakh, called the Shaksgam Valley, was ceded by Pakistan to the Chinese. The valley is famous for the largest number of glaciers, and China wanted that to be able to control the waters north of Jammu Kashmir. But back to Nehru and Thimayya. Nehru suddenly faced with a situation where he was facing military embarrassment, announced to the country that he had handed over the defense of Ladakh to the army. Now, Thimayya was quite upset with this. This has been brought out in great detail in a book by Kunal Verma called 1962, The War That Wasn't.